Before you grab your phone, before you check that text, before you scroll through another reel or rush into the chaos of your day, I want you to pause. Because the first few moments of your morning, they're not just routine, they are spiritual battlegrounds. Every morning you wake up, the enemy hopes you step out the door without direction. He doesn't mind a busy believer, he fears an aligned one. See, life is not about moving fast. It's about moving in purposeful alignment. Some of you have been exhausted, not because you're lazy, but because you've been walking without divine guidance. You're doing everything right on paper, working hard, being responsible, chasing success. But your spirit is tired because you've been carrying what was never yours to carry. Here's the truth. You were never meant to figure life out alone. You were designed to be led step by step. Not sprinting ahead in fear. Not stuck in yesterday's pain. But walking in rhythm with a God who sees the road you can't. This is why prayer matters. Not just on Sunday. Not just in emergencies. But every single morning. Because when you start your day in prayer, you're not just talking. You're downloading divine direction. You're saying, Lord, before I move, you move. Before I speak, you speak. Before I act, you lead. Some of you are one step of obedience away from peace. One whispered prayer away from breakthrough. One moment of surrender away from unlocking the very favor you've been praying for. But you have to align. You have to invite God into your morning. Not as a guest, but as the leader. Because the most powerful thing you can say at the start of your day is this: "O Lord, walk before me. Guide my every step." Now let's go deeper. That's this direction, not just protection. When we wake up each morning, most of us say, "Lord, protect me today." And that's good. Protection is necessary. But what if I told you that God didn't just come to protect you? He came to direct you. You see, protection keeps you safe, but direction takes you somewhere. One keeps you from danger. The other leads you into destiny. That's the difference between survival and significance. There are people who go through life asking God to shield them from harm, but never ask Him to guide them toward purpose. And then they wonder why they're stuck, why they're drained, why they keep circling the same mountains, the same dead-end relationships, the same unfulfilling jobs. Because protection alone will keep you in a bubble, but direction will push you out of your comfort zone into your calling. Let me make this plain. If you're driving a car, airbags are great. That's protection. But what good is having airbags if you have no GPS? If you have no destination? You may survive the crash, but you'll still be lost. Protection keeps you alive. Direction gives you a reason to live. Some of you are surviving, but not living. Breathing, but not building. Waking up, but not rising up. And it's all because you've mistaken divine covering for divine calling. You can wear the armor of God and still miss the assignment of God. Because the armor protects you, but the assignment propels you. Don't just pray, "Lord, keep me safe." Begin to say, "Lord, show me the way." Because some attacks you're praying against are happening simply because you're on the wrong road. It's not that the enemy is strong. It's that you're going somewhere you were never supposed to be. Wrong connections, wrong decisions, wrong environments. You're asking God to rescue you when what you need is God to redirect you. Let me give you a real life example. Imagine a man walking through a jungle. He has a sword, shield, armor, everything he needs to defend himself. But he has no map, no compass. And every day he wakes up swinging, fighting, surviving, but going nowhere. Some of you are in that jungle right now. You're tired. You're worn out. Not because you're weak, but because you're unlawed. You were never designed to fight for survival when you were created to walk in strategy. And here's the truth many never realize until it's too late. God's protection is reactive, but His direction is proactive. Protection shows up after the threat, but direction avoids the trap altogether. Some of the pain you're experiencing could have been avoided if direction had come before decision. But when you don't consult God early, you invite crisis later. We're so conditioned to pray, "God, protect me from danger." But when was the last time you prayed, "God, lead me away from it," before I even see it? You don't have to step into every storm to learn a lesson. Sometimes wisdom is avoiding what others had to endure. And that kind of wisdom only comes when you stop making God your bodyguard and start making Him your compass. Think about the GPS on your phone. You type in your destination and it begins to guide you. But have you ever ignored the voice? You thought you knew a shortcut. You thought there was a faster way. And then you hit traffic, detours, roadblocks, and suddenly the system says, recalculating. It never stops guiding you. It just finds a new route to get you there. But here's the powerful truth. If you had listened the first time, you wouldn't have needed a detour. Many of you are living in a detour right now. Not because God failed to lead you, but because you failed to follow. And now you're asking him to protect you in a route he never chose for you. Hear me clearly, God's mercy will cover you, but his wisdom was supposed to lead you. Mercy shows up in the pit, but wisdom keeps you from falling in. Sometimes the very thing you're calling a trial was never supposed to be your testimony. It was supposed to be a temptation avoided. But when you don't allow God to guide your steps, you end up calling storms lessons that should have been instructions. The Holy Spirit wasn't silent. You were just distracted. It's time to change your prayer. No more just asking God to shield your day. Ask him to shape it. No more just asking for favor. Ask for footsteps. Because blessings follow obedience, and you can't obey a direction you never received. Some of you are out here asking God to bless your plans when what you really need is to surrender them. Why ask him to bless a road he never called you to walk? Listen, you don't need to see the whole staircase, but you do need to trust the next step. Guidance from God is often quiet, but it's never absent. The reason he hasn't told you step 5 is because you've ignored step 1. God doesn't waste instructions on disobedient ears. Direction flows when you walk in what you already know. When you honor the last word, he gives you the next one. The truth is, some people want God to endorse their decisions, not lead them into his. But leadership means letting go. It means surrendering your will, your timeline, your plans, and trusting that his path is higher, even when it's slower. Trusting that the road less traveled leads to the life most fulfilled. Don't wake up and just ask for protection from danger. Ask for deliverance from distraction. Because the greatest threat to your purpose isn't always the enemy, it's the detour. The subtle path that looks right, feels comfortable, but leads nowhere. If you're not led by God, you'll be driven by everything else: emotion, fear, ego, opinions, pressure, culture. And all of it will lead you in circles while you think you're progressing. Divine leadership requires surrender. Divine leadership requires surrender. That's not just a catchy phrase. It's a principle that separates those who are led by God from those who merely claim him in name. See, most people want the blessings of heaven, but still want to hold the steering wheel of their own lives. They pray, Lord, lead me, but in reality, they only want God to co-sign their personal decisions. But hear this loud and clear: you cannot be led by God and led by yourself at the same time. Surrender isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's not giving up, it's leveling up. It's realizing that your vision is limited, your strength is temporary, and your plans, no matter how strategic, are nothing without divine alignment. We've been taught that being in control means being powerful. But in the kingdom, power comes from yielding. True strength is revealed not in how much control you keep, but in how much control you're willing to release to God. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a child trying to carry a suitcase that's twice their size. They're dragging it, stumbling, exhausted, frustrated. Yet when the father reaches out to help, the child says, "No, I got it." Isn't that exactly how many of us act with God? We carry emotional burdens, financial stress, relationship confusion, and spiritual emptiness, dragging it behind us every day. And when God says, "Let me take it," we say, "No, I can handle it." But you weren't built to carry life on your own. You were created to walk with God, not wrestle against him. Surrender is not silence. It's a declaration of trust. It's standing in the middle of uncertainty and saying, "God, I don't know what's next, but I trust you do." That's where leadership begins. Because God doesn't take the lead from people who are still trying to prove they know the way. He leads those who invite him to lead. If you want divine direction, you must first step off the throne of your own life and say, "Lord, I'm not the CEO here, you are." Here's what makes surrender difficult. It often feels like losing. Like letting go of your ambition, your plans, your timing. But that's the illusion. You think you're losing control, but you're actually gaining clarity. Because when you surrender to God, you don't step into confusion. You step into divine alignment. And in alignment, everything flows. Peace flows. Resources flow. Relationships fall into place. But as long as you're clinging to your own plan, you're blocking the flow. There's a story I once heard about a tightrope walker who stretched a rope across a wide canyon. A crowd gathered as he walked back and forth, carrying objects, even pushing a wheelbarrow. The people clapped and cheered. Then he asked, How many of you believe I can carry a person across this rope in this wheelbarrow? Everyone shouted, yes, we believe. Then he said, who will volunteer to get in? Silence. That's the difference between faith and surrender. Faith says, I believe God can do it. Surrender says, I'll get in the wheelbarrow. And that's where most people stop. They believe in God's ability, but not enough to hand him the script. They say, Lord, guide me, but still have a plan B tucked in their back pocket. But here's the raw truth. God does his best work with people who burn their backup plans. Think about Jesus in the garden, sweating blood, overwhelmed, yet saying, not my will, but yours be done. That wasn't passive resignation. That was active surrender. It was a conscious decision to trust divine leadership even when it hurt, even when the road ahead looked dark. If the Son of God had to surrender to fulfill his assignment, what makes you think you can complete yours without doing the same? Some of you are at a standstill in life, not because God said no, but because he's waiting on your yes. He's not withholding the blessing. He's waiting on your surrender. You're asking for doors to open, but doors don't open for people who refuse to knock on the right ones. And you can't knock on the right ones if you're still chasing your own vision instead of aligning with his. There's power in letting go. When you release your limited view, you make space for divine insight. When you lay down your timeline, you step into God's perfect timing. When you surrender your ambition, you tap into purpose. God doesn't want to take control to dominate you. He wants to lead you into a future bigger than what you could build on your own. Let me say it like this: a kite only rises when it's anchored by a string. Without that tension, without that connection, it crashes. Your surrender is the string that allows your life to soar. It's the invisible force keeping you from flying into destruction. It's the unseen guidance that lifts you while keeping you aligned. In everyday life, this shows up in small ways. It means saying no to an opportunity that looks good but doesn't feel right. It means ending a relationship that satisfies your emotions but starves your soul. It means choosing obedience over convenience and purpose over popularity. It means waking up each day and saying, Lord, I surrender, not just the big things, but the small ones too. Lead me in every detail. And here's what you'll discover: surrender doesn't take your life. It gives it back to you. But now it's infused with wisdom, with purpose, with direction. You no longer have to force doors open or fake your strength. You walk in peace because you're not carrying everything anymore. You're just following the one who sees the whole picture. Every step has kingdom significance. Every step has kingdom significance. Not just the big leaps, not just the breakthroughs, not just the moments where people are clapping for you and everything feels divine. No, even the silent steps, the painful steps, the lonely steps, they all count in the kingdom of God. We've been taught to chase milestones, but in the kingdom, it's not just about the moments that go viral. It's about the moments no one sees but heaven. You must understand that God is a God of details. He doesn't just operate at the finish line. He moves in the footsteps. Every inch you move in faith matters. Every act of obedience, even when no one's watching, carries weight in the unseen realm. That phone call you chose not to answer because you've grown. That conversation you walked away from because peace meant more than pride. That prayer you whispered through tears when no one knew what you were facing. Heaven recorded it. See, you're looking at your life and asking, what difference is this making? But God is saying, that step you just took, it shook the kingdom of darkness. That step of forgiving someone who never apologized. That step of staying faithful to the vision when people mocked it. That step of choosing integrity when compromise would have been easier. You thought it was small. God says it was significant. You've got to stop judging the importance of your steps by how dramatic they look. Some of the most powerful moves you'll ever make will feel like nothing at first. It's not about how loud the step sounds. It's about the weight of the obedience behind it. And in the kingdom, obedience carries more power than applause. Purpose walks quietly. Destiny doesn't always make noise. Let me give you a practical example. Think of someone training for a marathon. They don't start with 26 miles. They start with one step, one run, one lap. And those early steps don't feel glamorous. They hurt. They feel like weakness. But they build muscle momentum and mental strength. Every step, though ordinary in the moment, is preparing them for something extraordinary later. It's the same with your spiritual journey. Every disciplined morning, every scripture you meditate on, Every time you worship when you don't feel like it, it's building something eternal. That's why you cannot afford to despise small beginnings. That quiet season of your life right now, it's not punishment, it's preparation. And that preparation is sacred. It's holy ground. Don't rush through it just because it doesn't look impressive on social media. You may not be seen, but you are being shaped. And in the kingdom, shaping always precedes showing. God will form you in the wilderness before he presents you in the spotlight. You have to understand how strategic heaven is. Nothing is wasted. Not the wrong turns, not the delays, not even the mistakes. When surrendered, even your detours can be woven into your destiny. God is not just using your victories, he's using your valleys, that broken relationship, that lost job, that season of isolation. If you keep walking in faith, those steps become a testimony. You may not realize it, but every step you've taken, even the ones that hurt, are setting up something bigger than what you see. Sometimes the most anointed steps are the most misunderstood. Noah built an ark before it ever rained. Abraham walked away from everything familiar to follow a promise he hadn't seen. David went back to the sheep after being anointed king. None of those steps made sense to the people around them. But they made sense in heaven. Obedience often looks strange before it looks successful. You must remind yourself daily this step matters. Whether it's going to work when you're underpaid, but still showing excellence. Whether it's parenting that child when you feel overwhelmed, but choose patience. Whether it's tithing when your bank account is low, but your faith is high. These are not normal steps. They are prophetic declarations that say, God, I trust you, even here, even now. And here's the deep truth. Every step you take in alignment with God creates a ripple effect in the unseen realm. You don't know who's watching you. You don't know what curse you're breaking just by standing strong. You don't know how your small act of obedience is unlocking someone else's breakthrough. Your steps are not just about you. They carry generational impact. Think about a seed. You plant it in the dirt, it's covered, buried, unseen. But just because it's not visible doesn't mean it's not growing. Every step you take in faith is like that seed. You're sowing faithfulness. You're sowing commitment. You're sowing purpose. And in due time it will sprout. But you've got to keep walking even when you don't see the fruit yet. So walk through that hard season like it matters, because it does. Walk into that boardroom like God sent you there. Walk into that classroom, that office, that house, that storm, knowing that your steps are ordered. This isn't random. You're not wandering. You're walking in destiny, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. Heaven doesn't measure steps the way earth does. Earth looks for followers, fans, and fame. Heaven looks for faith. Earth celebrates speed. Heaven honors obedience. So the next time you take a small step and the world doesn't applaud, know that angels are still moving on your behalf. Because in the kingdom of God, every step carries divine significance, even the quiet ones. Clarity comes after obedience. Clarity comes after obedience, not before. That's the spiritual principle most people struggle with, because in our human nature, we want details, explanations, blueprints, and guarantees before we move. We want God to lay it all out on the table so we can evaluate whether his plan makes sense to our logic. But God doesn't operate according to your comfort. He operates according to your calling. And calling always demands obedience before understanding. You will never get the full picture standing still. Revelation flows when you move. Direction becomes clear when you step. It's like headlights on a dark road. They don't show the entire journey, just enough to keep you moving forward. And as you move, more light appears. That's how God leads. He won't show you step 5 until you've obeyed step 1. And if you're waiting for everything to make sense before you trust him, you'll be stuck in delay for the rest of your life. Some people are not waiting on God. God is waiting on them. He already gave you the word. He already spoke the instruction. But you're still analyzing it, questioning it, delaying it, and disguising it as waiting on confirmation. No. Sometimes what we call waiting on God is really fear dressed up as spirituality. It's not faith. If you need all the facts, let me take you into daily life. Think about a GPS. You put in the destination, it tells you the first turn, but if you don't move, it goes silent. Why? Because the GPS doesn't keep speaking until you obey the last instruction. Some of you haven't heard from God not because he's gone silent, but because you haven't moved on what he already told you. You're asking for a new word, but God is pointing to the last one you ignored. Heaven doesn't speak just to entertain you, it speaks to activate you. Obedience is the unlock code. It's the bridge between confusion and clarity. You don't obey because you understand. You obey to gain understanding. That job you're scared to apply for. That conversation you've been avoiding. That habit you know you need to break. That move you've been resisting. You're asking God for signs, but He's waiting for surrender. Because clarity is not something you receive. It's something that's revealed in the process of trust. Let's talk about Abraham. God told him, go to a land I will show you. Not a Google map, not a 5-year plan, not even a clue. Just go. And Abraham moved. That's radical faith. That's obedience that births clarity. We now look back at his story and call him father of faith. But in the moment, all he had was a strange command and the guts to follow. You're asking God to do something big, but you won't obey the basic. You want elevation, but refuse to pass the test of instruction. It's easy to obey when it makes sense. When the reward is visible, when people clap for you. But what about when the instruction is uncomfortable, when it costs you relationships, when it makes you look crazy? That's where real growth begins. Because obedience is not about comfort, it's about trust. And trust is proven when obedience is required without explanation. You see, you're asking for clarity, but God is building your character. He's not just trying to show you the future, He's trying to shape the person who will walk into it. If God gave you all the answers now, you'd skip the lessons. You'd shortcut the process. You'd carry an anointing you haven't been crushed for. And the weight of what you want would destroy you because you skipped the process of obedience that was supposed to prepare you. Clarity is not the first step. Obedience is. And every act of obedience pulls back the veil just a little more. That's how you move from confusion to confirmation, from fog to focus. When you look back, you'll realize the moments of obedience you thought were random were actually divine puzzles coming together perfectly. But they didn't make sense while you were walking. They made sense after you trusted. Think about Peter. He was on the boat and saw Jesus walking on the water. He said, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come. Jesus didn't give him a dissertation. He didn't give him flotation advice. He just said, come. That's it. And Peter stepped out. Was it scary? Yes. Was it uncertain? Yes. But clarity came when his feet hit the waves. You want to walk on water, but you're still negotiating with the boat. There is no clarity for the hesitant, only for the obedient. You can't pray for clarity and run from obedience. It doesn't work like that. You must learn to obey God when it's not popular, when it's not comfortable, when it's not applauded. Because clarity is not an explanation. It's a revelation that flows through faith. God is not going to explain everything to you before you move, because then faith wouldn't be necessary. And without faith, it is impossible to please Him. So the next time you find yourself saying, I just wish I had more clarity, stop and ask, hey, I obeyed the last thing God told me to do. Because the clarity you're craving is locked inside the step you've been resisting. The right path is often the narrow one. The right path is often the narrow one. That statement sounds poetic until life forces you to walk it. Because the narrow path isn't glamorous. It's not packed with applause, comfort, or easy decisions. It's the road where people misunderstand you. It's the road where you sometimes cry yourself to sleep, wondering if you made the right choice. It's the road where conviction costs you popularity and obedience makes you look strange in a world obsessed with self-promotion and shortcuts. But hear this truth: the narrow path may feel lonely, but it leads to greatness that the crowd will never reach. We live in a world where broad is celebrated. Do what feels good. Take the easy way out. Follow the trend. Blend in. Don't offend. But the broad road always leads to brokenness. It promises peace, but it delivers pain. It seduces you with speed, but it robs you of substance. And the tragedy is that so many choose it. Not because they don't have potential, because they lack the courage to be different. To walk the narrow path, you must be willing to disappoint people to obey God. You must be okay with walking alone for a while. You must stop measuring your journey by how many people are walking beside you and start measuring it by whether God is going before you. Because if He's not leading it, it doesn't matter how comfortable it feels. It's the wrong path. Comfort is not confirmation. Crowds are not evidence of calling. Think about a mountain trail. The higher you go, the narrower the path gets. Fewer people, thinner air, harder conditions, but a greater view. That's how destiny works. Not everyone is willing to climb. Not everyone is willing to say no to distractions. Not everyone is willing to deny themselves, carry their cross, and follow truth. But those who do, they see things no one else sees. They live on a level that others only dream about. Because elevation requires separation. You cannot walk the narrow path and carry everything with you. You have to drop the excess, pride, fear, approval addiction, toxic relationships, excuses. Let me bring it home with a real life example. Imagine you're in a crowded shopping mall with 100 people all running toward the same door because they heard there's a shortcut. But that door leads to a dead-end alley. Then you see a small hidden staircase with a sign that says emergency exit, authorized personnel only. Most people ignore it. But a few stop, read the sign, and take the stairs. It's tight. It's steep. It's not glamorous. But when they get to the top, they're outside, free, safe. That's the narrow path. While others chase hype, you choose hiddenness. While others seek approval, you pursue alignment. The right path isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like silence, like restraint, like walking away from a toxic opportunity that others would die for, like turning down a platform because your soul's not ready, like refusing to compromise your values for a seat at the table. And people will look at you sideways and say, why would you give that up? But they don't understand. You're not chasing success, you're chasing significance. And significance never travels the broad road. You may feel left out right now. You may be watching people take shortcuts that seem to be working. You may be asking, did I choose wrong? But remember, shortcuts never build strength. Fast success never lasts. What's built fast usually falls faster. But what's built on the narrow path, what's forged in silence, pressure, and purity lasts. It carries weight. It transforms lives. It glorifies God. The broad road is full of people who are moving fast but going nowhere. It's the place where compromise feels normal, where mediocrity is praised, where people are celebrated for being trendy rather than truthful. But the narrow path, it's for the few who know they were born for more. The few who aren't interested in blending in. The few who'd rather walk in purpose alone than walk in popularity surrounded. Sometimes the narrow path means turning down an opportunity that looks perfect on paper but feels wrong in your spirit. Sometimes it means keeping your standards when everyone around you is lowering theirs. Sometimes it means not explaining yourself, just obeying. Because the narrow path doesn't always come with validation, but it always comes with peace. That inner peace that whispers, I'm in the will of God, even if it doesn't make sense yet. You won't always be clapped for on the narrow path, but you'll be kept. You'll be trusted with things the crowd will never touch. Why? Because God doesn't pour oil on compromise. He pours it on obedience. And obedience is forged in the tension of the narrow road. It's in the private decisions, the secret sacrifices, the disciplined steps when no one is watching. You don't need the crowd to believe in your journey. You just need the courage to take the next step, even if it's uphill. Because every step on the narrow road is an investment into a future that will outlive you. A legacy built not on applause, but on alignment. And alignment requires you to walk where others won't, because you're being called to carry what others can't. Prayer aligns you with heaven's GPS. Prayer aligns you with heaven's GPS. That's not just a nice metaphor. It's a spiritual reality that too many overlook in the chaos of daily life. You wake up, check your notifications, scroll through social media, glance at your to-do list, and step into your day like a soldier without a mission briefing. But when you skip prayer, you're not just skipping a routine, you're bypassing divine alignment. You're walking blindly into a world filled with distractions, warfare, and detours without consulting the very one who sees the full picture. Prayer is not about sounding religious. It's not about using fancy words or trying to impress God with your vocabulary. Prayer is connection. Prayer is calibration. It's the moment you pause and say, God, I know you see what I can't. I may not know what today holds, but I'm not leaving this place until I'm aligned with your will. That kind of prayer doesn't just touch heaven. It shifts the trajectory of your entire day. Think about your car's GPS. Before you start moving, you input the destination. And what does it do? It finds the best route, taking into account traffic, construction, roadblocks, and detours you'll never see until you're face to face with them. It calculates a route that saves you time, protects you from danger, and ensures you don't end up lost. Prayer works the same way. You may have your plans, your agenda, your goals, but God has the route. And when you align through prayer, you give heaven permission to override what's convenient with what's correct. The problem is too many people treat prayer like a spare tire instead of a steering wheel. They only reach for it when things go flat, when the crisis hits, when the job falls through, when the betrayal happens. But prayer was never meant to be your emergency contact. It was meant to be your daily compass. You don't pray to inform God of your problems. You pray to position yourself for His wisdom. Let me make it plain with real life. You ever leave your house thinking you know exactly how the day is going to go? You've got your meetings lined up, your goals in order, your schedule tight. And suddenly, boom, life hits. A flat tire, an argument, a missed opportunity, a delay that throws your whole mood off. And now you're reacting instead of responding. But imagine if you had prayed first. Imagine if you had taken 10 minutes to say, Lord, guide my responses today. Guard my spirit. Interrupt any assignment that's not from you. Show me what to prioritize. Help me hear your voice louder than my emotions. You see, prayer isn't just about protection. It's about positioning. It doesn't just keep bad things away. It brings right things toward you. Right thoughts, right people, right timing. And sometimes through prayer, God will reroute you. You'll feel a nudge not to make that call, not to send that message, not to walk into that deal. And later, you realize that gentle whisper saved you from something that could have wrecked your peace or your destiny. Prayer is the software update your soul needs every day. The world will fill your mind with noise, comparison, fear, anxiety, pressure. But prayer resets your internal system. It reminds you who you are, who God is, and what truly matters. It silences the inner chaos and brings heaven's clarity. Have you ever walked out of prayer not with answers, but with peace? That's the alignment. That's when you know you've tapped into something higher than yourself. But let's be real. Prayer isn't always convenient. It won't always feel powerful. There are mornings when you're tired, days when you don't feel anything. But hear me, faithfulness is greater than feeling. Even when you don't sense the shift, heaven is working. Even when your voice shakes, your words are heard. Even when all you can say is, God, I need you. You are aligning with the mind of Christ. And that alignment is dangerous to hell. Some people wonder why they keep ending up in the same cycles, same relationships, same stress, same setbacks. And they keep asking, God, where are you? But the truth is, you can't follow divine direction if you never consult the source. If you only pray when you're desperate, you'll live from one crisis to the next. But when prayer becomes your lifestyle, peace becomes your portion. When you pray, you don't just shift your morning, you shift atmospheres. You become spiritually sensitive to things others miss. You start seeing with discernment. That business meeting, suddenly you can sense the hidden motives. That friendship, you realize it's seasonal, not permanent. That door that closed. You don't panic because prayer already told you there's something better coming. Prayer doesn't always change the outside, but it always changes you on the inside. There's something powerful about starting your day with prayer because you don't know what kind of assignment is coming against your peace. You don't know who's plotting, what temptation is waiting, what spiritual battles are brewing. But heaven knows. And when you align through prayer, you step out covered. You move differently. You speak with authority. You operate in grace. People may not understand it, but there's a glow on you, a strength on you, a stillness in your spirit. And it all started in the secret place. So no matter how busy your life gets, how many responsibilities weigh on your shoulders, never let anything rob you of your prayer time. That's your lifeline. That's your strategy room. That's where battles are won before they even start. That's where you remember that you are not navigating life alone. Heaven is guiding you every step of the way. You were never meant to walk through this life guessing, stumbling and hoping you're on the right path. You were created with a purpose so precise, so powerful, that heaven itself responds when you align with it. Prayer is not your last resort. It's your first strategy. It's not something you squeeze into your schedule. It's what gives your schedule meaning. When you understand that, everything about how you move changes. Because now, you're not just reacting to life, you're responding to divine instruction. You're no longer running on fumes, you're fueled by revelation. You are not lost. You are not forgotten. You are not navigating blindly. You are guided, chosen, and covered. And the moment you say, Lord, I surrender my way for your will, the GPS of heaven begins to activate. That's when the doors open that no man can shut. That's when your steps begin to sync with divine timing. That's when opportunities chase you down. Not because you're lucky, but because you're aligned. Greatness doesn't start in the spotlight. It starts in the secret place. It starts on your knees. It starts with whispered prayers that no one hears but God. And here's the truth: private devotion builds public elevation. The people you admire, the leaders who move nations, the voices that shake generations, they weren't just talented. They were tuned in. They knew that without alignment, all success is temporary. Without divine guidance, all motion is meaningless. Without prayer, purpose becomes performance. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to know the next 5 years. You just need to trust the next step. Because faith doesn't demand full vision. It demands full surrender, even when the path is narrow, even when the route looks unfamiliar, even when it doesn't match your plan. You must declare, God, I'd rather walk in mystery with you than in clarity without you. Every day you wake up, you're faced with two options: walk in assumption or walk in alignment. One leaves you drained, the other fills you with divine power. One leads to chaos, the other leads to calling. When you pray, you plug into a power that hell can't stop. You awaken something eternal within you. And when heaven gets involved, it's no longer just your life. It becomes God's message wrapped in human skin. You have to stop waiting until life collapses before you start praying. Don't let a breakdown be the only thing that brings you to your knees. Let wisdom bring you there. Let hunger for purpose bring you there. Let vision bring you there. Because what you build in the presence of God cannot be shaken by the pressures of life. Storms will come. People will fail you. Doors may close. But when you are aligned, you remain unshaken. Because you're not walking in your strength. You're walking in supernatural strategy. You were not created to wander. You were created to walk in divine rhythm. And when you make prayer your lifestyle, not your emergency exit, you walk with clarity the world can't explain. That's why you'll move in peace when others panic. That's why you'll thrive in the same places others fail. That's why you'll carry light in the middle of darkness. Not because you're better, but because you're aligned. So rise up every morning with a new declaration. I don't move until I hear from heaven. Make that your standard. Make that your anchor. Because when heaven leads, favor follows. When God orders your steps, no man can block your journey. And when you pray, not only does heaven move, but hell trembles. Because it knows a praying person is a dangerous person, a focused person, a guided person, a person who cannot be stopped by anything or anyone. Remember this: when you align with God, you become unstoppable. When you pray, you become unshakable. When you walk in divine instruction, you don't just make a living, you make a legacy. So don't just chase success, chase alignment. Don't just chase money, chase meaning. Don't just chase attention, chase assignment. And if you ever wonder what difference your prayer makes, understand this: a single whisper from a heart aligned with God can shift generations. Because prayer isn't just a moment. It's the birthplace of miracles, movement, and momentum. You're not just living, you're being led. So keep praying, keep aligning, keep walking. And watch what heaven does through a life fully surrendered.